Hello, everybody, and good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Oh, hey. It is your girl, Ruthie the Truth, your financial wellness coach and your number one strategist for goal-driven planning. And today I have a very special guest on, Miss Bernadette Joy. Hey, welcome,
Hello.
welcome, welcome. I'm so excited because we are going to be deep diving into her brand new book, The Crush Your Money Goals. And we are going to speak about what crush actually means and all of the life transitions that we have gone through as far, and also the reflections and some alignments that we have. All right, so let me see. Okay, I think I'm supposed to be doing this live here on Instagram. Let me try to add her on Instagram. Hold on, let me see. How do I do this thing here? All right, here we go. All right, so everybody on Instagram, let me do that. Here we go. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Oh no, what's happening here?
I think I'm there.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, might be echo though.
I'm not sure where this feedback is coming from. I don't know if that's on my end.
Mm, could be on my end. Whoa. What's that?
Okay. It's probably on my end.
Can you, are you still hearing it?
Yeah. It may be on my end. I don't know what. All right, I'm not sure exactly what's happening.
There, can you see me?
Hold on, let me see. No, I think it's gone.
Okay. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay,
No.
good.
Oh. All right, yeah, I hear you. Ah! Okay, well, welcome everybody. I know everybody's coming in here. All right. Yes, yes, yes. All right, so here we go. All right, here we go. I think there's like a delay on my end somehow. I don't know what's going on here. All right, so in any case, let's just go with the flow. All right, so for your book, Crush Your Money Goals, really quickly, for everybody who doesn't know, if you could just, I guess I could share what I know of, who you are and what you do. So we met through FinCon at a conference, and you were so graciously extended your book to me for me to read and get a lot of insight as far as um, how to basically help graduates. So basically, I focus on the dads and grads, and a lot of the graduates have been struggling with a lot of debt, student loan debt to be specific. And most oftentimes, it's very difficult to navigate changes that are happening in life, especially in real time. And so, um, our alignment is basically goals. However, you focus on goals with your crush acronym, and I focus on goals with my truth acronym. So we're going to talk about the true goals, as far as our collab is concerned, because there's a lot of truth that you dive into within your Crush Your Money Goals book. And for anybody who has not picked this book up yet, it is available right now. I'm going to let Bernadette Joy talk a lot more about that. Um, but yeah, like the truth behind crushing your money goals. Um, yeah, the book blew me away so much so that I didn't even have a chance to like get past chapter two because it's just so powerful to and so relatable. Even though I never had student loan debt, many of my followers do, and they are actively struggling and feeling as if there's no hope for them to get through this major life transition and also the identity that comes from no longer having debt. Like what does that look like? What were some of their money mistakes that they may have done, after college? And, not to get too deep into it, but I did want to just briefly highlight that you are the epitome of you can definitely do whatever you want to do. Nothing is ever going to stop you. And I absolutely love the fact that you crushed $300,000 of student loan debt and became a millionaire. And you make it real, and this is what I love you that, this is the true, it is true. And it is that you can crush your money goals, and it is not impossible. It is very attainable to accomplish whatever goals you have set using the CRUSH acronym. So if you could please elaborate for anybody who may be joining for the first time on what CRUSH is and how that worked in your life.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I am Bernadette Joy. I am based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, by way of Queens, New York. And I, just as you described, paid off $300,000 of debt. 72K of it was student loans. The other stuff was a bunch of other types of debt. So any kind of debt that you can probably accumulate, I have done in some shape or form in my life. And Crush is actually a labor of love of nearly a decade worth of research and experience and training other people on personal finance. And so my day job is as a personal finance expert, money coach, and journalist. And what I really love about what we'll probably talk more is what I found that CRUSH, the acronym stands for, and what has now become the training system that I do to help people walk through their personal finances, is that's really geared toward people who want financial freedom, not just literacy. And I make that really strong distinction to say there's nothing wrong with financial literacy, and that is a great first step. But like, if you use an analogy, just because you know how to read doesn't necessarily mean that you're fully educated, or doesn't mean that you are going to have all the skills you need to become wealthy. And so similarly, I try to teach people who are very focused on saying, you know what, I'm seeing the system right now, whether it's like the student loan system, whether it's the government, whether it is, corporate environments, and it's just not working in my favor, and it feels really hard. Those people are the ones that I'm looking to really help guide on finding simpler, more tangible steps on how they can actually crush their money goals, instead of what we found in our research with a lot of money books was just like kind of the same old advice that doesn't necessarily resonate with people, especially young grads right now, and isn't kind of modernized for today's world.
Right. I so agree because you're right. A lot of the times people they emphasize on financial literacy, but it's so much deeper than just being literate. And without having tangible, actionable steps, and especially in my audience, I have a lot of neurodivergent dads and grads. And so, anybody that knows anything about ADHD and OCD and autism and like the whole spectrum of neurodivergence, it's that much more difficult to comprehend what it looks like to envision getting through different steps and let alone just how to tackle certain things the way that traditional or neurotypical people tackle these situations. So I think that was the greatest takeaway that I received from reading just the first two chapters of the book, especially with the money mistakes, because a lot of these mistakes, especially if we're talking from a neurodivergent lens, our way of processing information and applying the application, a lot of times it's intuitive. And so even if we do read a book, then again, this is what I love about your book, like even with reading your book, I noticed like a lot of the neurodivergent side of me, like, oh, okay, this actually, I can see this, I can envision it. Like we tend to be visionaries. And so I think that is what works best with um, your crush analogy. And then just really quickly, if we can go through each of the letters to so that way anyone who's unfamiliar with your work, which I'm sure a lot of my dads and grads, they've actually reached out to me and say, oh, okay, you're gonna be, with Bernadette Joy, like, they looking forward to hearing more from you from the Ruthie D Truth perspective, and really more so for the neurodivergent dads and grads out there, because um, they are majority of leaders are struggling with some sort of neurodivergence, and that's not very popular when we think of the financial literacy component, and or even the emotions, because sometimes they can struggle with communication, you can struggle with just executive functioning, um, and as a leader, you have to function. There's no way you can not function as a leader. And so I just really wanted to touch on how your crush concept can really, how they can apply it today if they wanted to,
Yeah,
um,
sure.
for from a neurodivergent perspective.
Sure, I would love to. So I had the benefit and the honor of having, thousands of people go through this framework, and many of them who identify as neurodivergent, and they are some of my favorite clients because they really challenged me to think about how we can break this into very tangible, manageable steps, especially if you have ever felt overwhelmed by making financial decisions, which can send you down a bunch of different spirals or a bunch of different rabbit holes if there's not a clear step, or clear process. And so what I love about Crush is that it is in the order that you need to do things. So where I notice where a lot of people get things wrong with personal finances is they're trying to do too many things and out of order. And so especially for neurodivergent folks, what we figured out was by saying no, like this is actually step one, step two, step three, step four, step five. And there is wiggle room within each of those steps. But for example, people will skip straight to the S, or straight to the U, but not cover the C. So high level, CRUSH stands for the 5 steps in order that I think everyone should take in order to have a simpler plan that will actually lead towards financial freedom. So the C stands for curate your accounts, which simply says step one is you got to get all your stuff together and know what information you have on hand and clean it up. And so that's back in the day when I first started Crush, I used to start off with like mindset or like healing your money wounds or more of like the psychological part of it. But what I figured out is that most people need a starting point and feel like they're making little tangible progress before they trust the whole process. So C was curate your accounts. R is reverse into independence, which is simply now that we've curated your accounts, where do we want to go? So we're here and where are we trying to be? And there is an actual formula for us to calculate how much you need to become financially independent. So we walk through that process. Then the U is understand your net worth. And I put net worth, like net, in like parentheses because this is where we start to touch on a little bit of the how money makes us feel and how too often people correlate their self-worth with their net worth and trying to separate those two. But also practically speaking, have you calculated and do you understand each component of your net worth? And do you understand how each of these components are working in your favor? And then S, arguably my favorite, is spend intentionally. And so we
Mm-hmm.
talk about a lot of things that you might see in other books like budgeting and some tips on how to save money. But what I found is a lot of budgeting focuses on tracking, where I focus entirely on intention. And so if you are
Mhm.
able to set your intentions right from the beginning, there's actually not a lot of tracking you need to do, which is also is awesome for a lot of neurodivergent folks because the tracking piece
Mhm.
is where a lot of people tend to get overwhelmed. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I have to input like 1,000 transactions. I don't want to do that." Right? So, but
Right.
instead if we're saying the classic example I use is with spending intentionally is like, every day, do you wake up and say, oh, like today's the day I have to brush my teeth? Like, hopefully, like that's something you don't think a lot about, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
so, but really, the intention when you wake up every morning should be like, I want to be clean, I want to be healthy, or whatever. And like the task might be brushing your teeth, but you're not like putting on a checklist, oh, brush my teeth today, comb my hair today, right? And that's how a lot of people are treating their finances. They're treating it as a checklist versus what is my intention? What is the purpose of why I'm doing
Right.
these things? And then the last piece, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, is healing your money wounds. And that is where the psychology degree that I do have is very helpful in this line of work that I do is that understanding that most people um are not dumb and they're not lazy and all these things that the systems might try to convince us that it's our fault as to why we might not have enough money. But what I learned that most people, the reason they're not making better financial choices is because they're afraid. And so that's where we talk a lot about fears and making sure that you have good systems in place to help overcome some of those challenges.
Right. Absolutely. Now, someone said they're not able, says not hearing her. Is this something I just saw this? I don't know. It on the Instagram side, are you guys, can you type one in the chat if you're able to hear Bernadette? If you heard that, because I didn't even realize that somebody
Oh,
just sent. Yeah, I don't know what's happening.
I think if I change my settings, it might end up giving the feedback again.
Oh,
No, that's probably why.
well, let's see. In on the Instagram side, are you guys able to hear?
Probably not. I'm gonna guess probably not. But
That sucks. Well, I mean, we're still on YouTube, so
okay. If you're on Instagram and can't hear us, join us on YouTube.
yeah, yeah. Just go. Hold on. I should probably type in my YouTube in the chat, so that way they can head over to YouTube. There we go.
And
I don't know.
why don't we just end the one on Instagram so that way?
Okay, that makes sense. All
Okay.
right. Yep. All right. Head over to YouTube, guys. We're gonna talk on YouTube. All right. Cool.
Okay. So,
One second. All right. Let me just share it as is. Cool. This is actually a little bit easier now too, because now I can just look at you in one place
yeah, yeah.
instead of both. So, all right, cool. So, as far as the grief, right? Because this is the main topic that we wanted to go over. Normally, when I do the Wheel of Life Wednesday, I go over the 8 major categories in our lives, starting with friends on a scale of 1 to 10. You know, I ask the dads and grads how are they feeling, and then we go through all of the 8 categories, right? But today I wanted to do something a little bit different for the sake of your book launch, which with your book just recently launched
In December.
in
Hmm.
December. Yes. And so since you have the book launch, I really wanted to have this Wheel of Life check-in really surrounding your book and really highlighting you, especially because as a woman of color, I know it is very important to, especially with everything that's going on in the world right now, to be empowered to know that um, just because things may not be where the dads and grads want it to be financially in their life right now, that does not mean that anything can stop them from achieving their money goals. And so, a lot of people are dealing with a lot of grief in this time, and again, uh, grief is something that most people don't think about when they're thinking about planning and thinking about intentions. And oftentimes, even though we may have some intention with moving forward with certain plans in our lives and certain steps in life, um, sometimes life just starts lifing, and that could there could be a lot of random moments that we are struck with grief, and in honor of the wheel of life, this was a part of it was created because of the loss of my father and the grief that I had, you know, felt, which I didn't even know what was happening at that time. Um, and still I was able to push through. I had to drop out of college, raise a family. I had two children, was newly married, and just to give a little background story of the wheel of life side of it. And a lot of the growth of getting through motherhood and getting through my goals not being accomplished, many of them are still in progress. And we're talking, this is since 2012. I think this is what makes it even more special to me to have you here today, because life is just not promised. Tomorrow is not promised. We notice this in recent times. Sometimes it takes a lot of tragedy in order for people to kind of wake up and realize that uh, don't never take anything for granted. And pardon me if I get emotional, because I just, sometimes it just comes out and I don't even can't even, contain myself. Um, but I didn't expect for the book to really have remind me of a lot of the grief that I had gone through over the growth, and a lot of the fears and a lot of the changes that had taken place. And so the Crush Your Money Goals, the first two chapters really stopped me in my tracks, and really allowed me to reflect on the journey, and just how no matter what, like I don't really talk much about a lot of my money mistakes, but your book empowered me as a leader in the financial wellness space to talk more and to really share more of the story, about how these money mistakes, like I just used to always spend money on a lot of family, and after the loss of my father, the grief that came from um, losing a relative was very impactful. Like, it's difficult to still grow even now, and say, man, there's going to come a point where I'm going to have to leave relatives that are still alive behind in order to accomplish my goals. And this is part of the reason why, if I'm being true and honest with myself, I'm still not where I know I could have been years ago, you know. So I definitely wanted to say thank you so much for first publishing this, because it's a lot. I know a lot of work has gone into it. I could tell that a tremendous amount of work has gone into the intentions behind making sure that this book is very impacting and powerful for um, anybody really, but especially the dads and grads. I'm partial to dads and grads, and so yeah, I wanted to take time before we get into the mix of it to just say thank you, Bernadette, so much. And this book will hopefully help me accomplish my goal of having a positive financial impact in the lives of at least 800 dads and grads in leadership positions. And this will also honor the legacy of my late father. This month actually is the anniversary of his passing. And I know you said this is, your birthday this is your birthday month. So I'm like, oh man, this is interesting, how everything is working out. And so I'm not going to talk much because, sometimes you just, this is what happens. This is the real, this is the truth. Like sometimes you do get caught up in grief. And even when you want to flow a certain way, um, you can get caught, you know? And I'm just thinking of your book and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the irony of it is like, okay, I'm not going to be able to get through this live. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get through it.
That's okay. And that's okay.
But But yeah, but so yeah, so to talk more about some of the takeaways, right? The fear of success,
Mhm.
right? And in one of your in chapter 2 specifically, you speak about dealing with the price that comes with um leaving family and friends behind, and also again the mindset shift that's required um in order to grow and in order to accomplish your financial goals, independently. um what would you say, how does crush um align with the fear of success? If someone right now, I'm gonna just say me, right, just for the sake of us having this live stream, if a leader like such as myself or someone who sees themselves in me when I'm coming on here, is dealing with the fear of success, may have lost their father, um, I'll say specifically as in my case, um, and or losing other relatives who are close to them, uh, how would you say they can best apply the CRUSH acronym to help them get through that grief of their growth
Yeah,
process?
yeah. Well, one, I'm really grateful that you're being very honest and candid, and this is real life. And I will I will say that, I've been reflecting a lot the last couple of weeks to answer your question of like I'm kind of back at this age to heal your money wounds.
Okay.
And um and so for anyone who has experienced this a fear that the fact that you're going to go pursue your dreams, pursue freedom, pursue what is meant for you, that the price to pay sometimes are leaving your tribe and leaving people behind. And that is something I talk about a lot in the book, actually, because I've had to personally experience that. And similar to you, my father passed away as well. And I went through waves of grief just this past week where I looked. My goal was to sell 1,000 copies of the book before my birthday, which is the end of this month, and so we had crossed over that milestone last week. And my first thought was like, oh, it would have been really cool for my dad to see this, and I didn't have a great relationship with either of my parents in the sense of like they're very kind of stereotypical immigrant family where it's like everything, like you have to be the best, you have to get education, you have to get a good job, all that stuff. And I was always like trying to do something different. And
Right.
so part of it, if I'm being honest, was like, see, I wish my dad could see this to show him that I was going to be okay. Not only okay, but that I would be thriving.
Right.
And part of
Hmm.
it was just, me being a daughter, being like, wow, like I have this thing that I made. Kind of like if you remember, being in kindergarten and coming home and being excited to show your
Right.
parents this thing that you made. That's like, how I felt this past week. And so
Hmm.
I I realized this the last couple of days as I've been reflecting on it is, the challenge that I've had for pretty much most of my career that did hold me back was what are people going to think of me, and what um like I've gotten everything from you're not good enough to, oh, now you think you're too good, like in my family, right? And so
Right.
when I talk about the CRUSH acronym and specifically, and this book in particular, I have had a lot of people who are featured in the book, as well as people who have now read the book, now that there's been 1,000 people who've gotten a copy of it, who have reached out to me personally and said, what you described really resonated with them because so much of the other money books just talk about the math about it and don't actually talk about the real external environments that we as women of color specifically find ourselves in. And then I would also take the extra aspect of I have a lot of clients who are parents, who are also like, looking at the sandwich generation of I have to help my family, my generation and the generation before me. And I also have to think about the generation after me. So I might have kids and I might also have parents that I have to help support. And there
Right.
really wasn't a lot of there really wasn't a lot out there to help address that kind of unique situation, which is why I said we modernize this, where a lot of books say like kind of just focus on your like what are you going to do to send your kids to college, but you're like, oh, but my parents can't even retire right now, and I'm their retirement plan. So one of the chapters in particular that I would highlight for folks, especially as dads and grads here, is there is in the H, there is a section called, the peace plan and how you talk about money within your family and starting those conversations early. And it's never too early to have these conversations with your kids and even as an adult with your parents to say, here's where I'm struggling with money, here's where I'm struggling with finances, or here's where I need some help. Um, and having those conversations early, especially like in this demographic that you're talking about with like these graduates who these I'll still call them kids, right? But like
Hmm.
younger
The Gen Z,
folks,
right?
right? Like I have so many clients of mine who are parents who are just like, my kids think I'm made out of money and I'm like drowning in debt or whatever. And I'm like, but you kind of made it seem like you are made of money because whenever they ask you for things, you just give it to them or you don't really give them an opportunity to learn how to get those things on their own. And so I'm saying all of that in the sense of one of the biggest lessons I learned for why a lot of my clients who are parents who have kids who are about to graduate, that the reason that they actually don't talk about money with them or teach them about money sometimes is because they firsthand as kids saw the financial trauma of like what their parents had to go through. And so they're trying to shield their kids from that. Whereas
Right.
there is this medium where if you can be honest about where you are with money and show them numbers and show them how you make money and how you do taxes and how you do all those things, you'd be pleasantly surprised at the vast majority of my clients' kids that they will pick up on it and they will
Yep.
take responsibility and they will try to do their best. I have one of my longtime clients whose son uh finished the book before she did.
Wow.
And he's like voraciously reading it, and he's telling his mom, who's my client, "Oh, but Bernadette said this, but Bernadette said that.
Oh,
How come you're not doing it, right?" So,
yes.
we always talk a
Uh-huh.
lot about like, the dads are the ones responsible for teaching the kids, but the kids have so much to teach the parents as well. And so having a two-way
Absolutely.
conversation is very important.
Yes. And you know what it is? Like, I'm so glad that you brought up the different generations. And next week I'm gonna have Dr. J on here,
Hmm.
Zygmunt, to talk about the
Oh,
child
I love him.
free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm reading his I juggle between you guys' books, and he and I are gonna focus more on the generational norms. And I honestly believe this is what is causing a lot of stress within the sandwich generation specifically, because again, the communication piece was just not there, kind of like back in the day, and for the millennials growing up, their generation, the millennial generation, has a lot more changes that have taken place, and it's like, okay, these are all unprocessed changes. We never really had the opportunity to articulate the way that Gen Z now has to say, hey, this is how I was feeling. This is why, I didn't understand this. And especially, if you're neurodivergent, it's like you definitely didn't understand many things because most of the time you're the black sheep of the family. And to your point, it's like, when you know intuitively the best way to handle a situation, but your parents, if they're super traditional, they're like, no, you do as I say and not as I do. Now there's a lot of confusion because now these are the same grandparents that are involved in your children's life. And
That's
you're
right.
trying to teach the children to the best of your ability, which you still have, there's still a lot of growth and a lot of processing and a lot of communication that needs to be, transferred across the board. And there's a really difficult challenge. So it's like the easiest way, so to speak, to navigate that is by separating, and
Mhm.
getting, creating the physical space that's necessary in order to process, which then it brings on a whole nother slew of issues because, like you said, sometimes, in some situations, the parents are, they're in need of their child, obviously the boomer generation is in need of, and Gen X, they need their children.
Right.
Like, long story short. And so it's like in the millennial part, we need our children as well. But it's like, it's so interesting how the need of the child is um two different, it's like two dimensional because, or three dimensional, I guess. There are two different needs that are being fulfilled at the same time. And now it's like having to process as a neurodivergent both sides of the needs, like, giving the needs to your parents when you didn't really get the need, but then also your children, you're relying on your children, which is something that you're like, that's not my job as a parent. My job is for my child to need me. But I think a part of the resolution with the sandwich generation, yeah, is to lean in on your children because they are far more resilient. They seem to be much more capable of processing and communicating a lot of different things, and a lot of the trauma from the past that they may not have necessarily been aware of traditions and breaking traditions. It's like when you are the generational curse breaker, so to speak.
Right.
Now it's like your children are not really carrying that. So it's identifying the fact that, like, okay, you are actually the one that's carrying this burden of breaking those cycles that made absolutely no sense to you. And now your children are seeing it from two different sides, but without all of that burden, sometimes the art of, like, just letting go and letting things flow, which is another acronym I know you have,
Yeah.
that was such a game changer in my life on the leadership side. Yeah, sometimes you just gotta let it flow.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that is great. That is
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll interject is that
sure.
I'm pretty transparent about it, but the fact that the after my father passed away, so I'm the eighth of nine kids, seven from his first marriage and two from his second marriage, and of the two from his second marriage. And
Hmm.
there was no will in place, and there was no plan in place, and there was like none of that for us to fall back on. And unfortunately, it caused a lot of strife. Like it caused a lot of strife for us who um it would have been great if everyone could just focus on grieving versus having to like have these really awkward and tough conversations. And
Right.
so, like what I really encourage everyone, especially again, dads and grads, is to say, like it's not a matter of ifs. At some point, something will happen. Life will keep lifing. And
Absolutely.
so, are we equipping both you and the rest of the family to be able to build this resilience when things get hard? And so, why I am so passionate about people reading Crush, the book, is that this framework has gotten me through the worst times of my life, the worst times of my life. And that includes when my father passed away. That includes in all the aftermath of having to, like argue with my mom and my brother about certain things. It worked for me during the pandemic. It worked for me when my first business went under. Like there were so
Mm.
many things that I think that people tend to overcomplicate when things get tough is when people get into the fear mode of either like fight or freeze or flight, right? The usual things that we hear. And the best way I can describe how everything I outline in the book is that if you do these things, yes, it's going to be hard. I tell people what I'm talking about is simple, but it doesn't mean they're easy. Meaning
Right.
like there's not a lot of steps. There's not a lot of things. Even if you think about 25 habits, once you start reading the habits, you realize like, okay, I'm already doing some of these things and I just need to tweak them. Um,
Right.
but in order for us, any of us, to weather the storm when life is lifing, is you need a solid foundation, and Crush can be that foundation for um, most people. I have not really seen any circumstance where Crush did not work in some shape or form, but the emphasis
Hmm.
might have been on different letters. So some of my clients, like we
Right.
spend a lot of time on C because, maybe they're in their 60s and they've never looked at their finances and now we're having to backtrack like 60 years worth of like information. Or it might be the H where I am very, I had many clients, break into tears during our coaching sessions because they didn't realize that this is how they were feeling all this time and that it actually wasn't a money issue. It was something else, right? So I'm
Right.
really grateful that there are platforms like yours that are very open and honest about that and specifically targeting this dads and grads uh, kind of section of people, especially right now where I will say, I've had a lot of conversations with men, um, thought leaders specifically in the personal finance space, in the personal development space, or whatever, where men are really struggling to learn like new techniques around not only how to manage their own emotions and manage their own challenges, but then how do they pass that on to their kids? And so I think it's really great that we're having this talk. And I think the one thing that I am really looking forward to specifically for this population is if you have a grad, it would be great for you to read the book together because at the end of each chapter, there are questions that are meant to be discussion or reflection questions. And those are the perfect questions to bring up these conversations. So now you're not even having to think of the awkward questions
Yes.
to ask. Like I've given you the questions. Like
Right.
these are the questions I wish that I had in front of me when I had to have that tough conversation with my dad 5 years ago.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Again, like you said, the communication is so important. And the fact that feelings are involved, it can be very uncomfortable. And, having to fight through the level of discomfort that comes with having money conversations in general, but more specifically, your feelings that's connected to your finances. Well, on the male side, because, women are much more open to discussing feelings. It's like it's so taboo, but it literally requires you to um, kind of do away with a lot of the traditional upbringing. And I noticed the difference between like when I have prospects within the dads and grads. Most of the prospects are graduates that do not have children but
Mm-hmm.
want to plan for children.
Mm,
But they are struggling with the communication piece because they don't know how to feel, they say. There's two different things. So it's either they don't know how to, like, they don't really know what their feelings are. It's like, okay, they were literally traditionally taught you don't have feelings. And as a human being, that is completely unrealistic. But secondly, it's that whoever their partner, like if they have in a heterosexual couple that wants to have a child, like they're traditionally brought up to not explain any challenges that they may be facing, and like not to communicate that with the woman because she is emotional and stereotypically speaking, and she will weaponize this information in the long run. And that's where obviously coaches like you come in, you and I, and to have these the questions that it's like, okay, well, don't necessarily focus on any of the answers being weaponized. Focus on the end result and the goal that you want to accomplish from the answer to this question. And hopefully, any dad and grad that's watching this live specifically, if they've read your book, definitely, guys, leave a comment to let us know what were your key takeaways from the Crush Your Money Goals book, and also from this live stream, because obviously, Bernadette and I, we both have goals. She has clearly accomplished her goals because she is amazing at crushing money goals. I am learning, so I'm in progress. But if I could get like 800 comments, then I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I'm getting close. So we'll see how many comments we can get from this live stream specifically. Um, Especially as it pertains to answering those questions, do you feel as if the Crush Your Money Goals book, the questions at the end of the chapters, helps you to better communicate with your wife or your significant other towards accomplishing your financial goals? And if so, if yes, how so? And if not, what is it that we can probably do or say? What conversations do you think are necessary to have on our end that we can help you with the proper way to help you communicate with your significant other? And obviously crush your money goals. All right. Um, so without taking up too much time, I did want to go through the Wheel of Life because it says Wheel of Life
Sure.
Wednesday. And so really quick, I have the link. You know what? I don't even want to mess this thing up here. Let me see if I can send it without it going crazy. I might be able to do this really quickly. Oh, where is that? And so basically, we just do a round of the Wheel of Life, and take turns asking each other how we're feeling. I normally do this at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, but for the sake of wanting to take some time out to be able to um, talk more about your book and how it can really help the dads and grads community. Uh, so let me try it at 12:30. Let's see how this works, and give them some time to really take a look at your book. If they're like on their way home from work, they can stop at. Well, do you have it in? Is it in Barnes and Nobles yet? Where can they pick up your book?
It's everywhere. It's in Barnes
Ah,
and Nobles, it's in
there you
Amazon,
go.
it's at bookshop.org, which I try to gear people towards supporting
Okay.
local booksellers. And then if you like audio, it's on Audible.
Okay, perfect. See, look at that. So, to all the dads out there, you guys have like a cajillion options on your way from work today. Just make sure that you stop by the Barnes and Noble, stop by wherever you shop to get your book. If you want to get Audible to listen to the book on your drive home, this would be perfect. Just in time for Wheel of Life at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight, where we do the official Wheel of Life check-in.
I love that.
All
And
right.
I've been particularly encouraging people to go for the audiobook because I am personally the one narrating it. And the audiobook has worked really well for a lot of the busy folks who are commuting or want to do it while they're working out and stuff. And a lot of people have told me they've been able to get through the content a lot faster on audio.
Right, right. Absolutely. Yes. And by the way, the way that if anybody has ever listened to Bernadette Joy speak, oh my gosh, the energy that you will receive, I'm telling you, it's unmatched.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
unmatched. Yes. So I went ahead and printed out a quick, oh no, actually, I'll just use the actual workbook. So just to give you, for anybody who's watching for the first time, the Wheel of Life workbook is or Wheel of Life Wednesday check-ins are really designated for dads and grads to take time to find out how they're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 about each of the 8 major categories within their life, two of which have subcategories. And this is really to help you with expressing your feelings and using numbers because in finance we talk about numbers all the time, but this workbook actually integrates both um, your feelings using a number and also there's a feelings wheel that's attached if you visit. I'm not sure if it's completely up on the website just yet. I know my website is up, getting updated at the moment, but I will leave link in the description box below on YouTube, so that way you'll be able to see the Wheel of Life Wednesday. So I keep forgetting to take this thing off here, the background. And so really quickly, for Wheel of Life Wednesday, you the objective is to find someone who you trust, which I definitely trust Bernadette Joy, and you take time to share with each other your weekly experience, right? And so each of you will choose a color. Now I have the feelings wheel right here behind me. I know this thing is moving around all over the place. Which the feelings wheel has colors attached to it, so you can use any of the feelings wheel colors, or if you choose to use your favorite color, it's up to you how you want to incorporate your wheel. But the objective is to find the word that is associated with the color of on the feelings wheel. And if you can't find, if any, like obviously this is just a template of words, but if you have words yourself that you are, to describe how you're feeling, then you will write that word in the follow up. Like I have blank pages behind the wheel, so that way you can take notes and explain why you chose that word and why you're feeling that way. For the sake of time, we're just going to do the numbers because um,
Yeah.
it's just a little bit easier. All right. So the eight categories are friends, health, family, fun, education, love life, personal growth, and career. All right. And so the two categories that have subcategories are health, which is divided into mental health and physical health. And love life is divided into the two subcategories self love and romantic love. And so with the Wheel of Life, um, the digital version, it breaks down the actual examples of what each category is. All right. So we'll start with uh, friends. So on a scale of 1 to 10, oh my goodness, this thing. This is I have to put the background on, otherwise it's gonna keep going crazy. Maybe I'll just change it. All right, here we go. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out this technology thing here.
That's
It just
great. You're
never
doing,
works.
you're doing great.
Yeah. All right. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Bernadette, how are you feeling about your friends category for this week?
I'll say a 7.
Okay. All right. 7 out of 10. All right. And what makes you choose that number?
I because my birthday is coming up this end of this month, people have been like uh very generous to block out their calendar for me
Aw.
to celebrate my birthday later this month, and
Mhm.
my husband and I have been spending a lot of time with new friends around our dance hobby and our yoga hobby. So we've been
Nice.
like meeting some new people who I don't know if you categorize them as friends yet in the sense of like we are getting to know them, but it feels really nice
Right.
to meet new people as adults.
Okay. Yeah, right. I would say that too, especially as you continue to grow. Learning from new people is always a plus. And dancing and yoga, it kind of hits multiple things, and all in one.
Mhm.
I would say on my end, for friends, I have to say I'm probably at like a 5, neutral. Only because, as I was explaining earlier, uh, the transition of really defining who my friends truly are
Mhm.
is where I'm at right now in life, because it's kind of transcending into a different uh, phase of identifying who I am to my core. And the neurodivergent thing is something that not everybody is accepting of,
Yeah,
and majority of people are, I mean, as an influencer, you want people to be influenced, but then it makes me realize how influenced people can be, and not really have a thought process for themselves, as far as like, okay, well,
that's right.
like, yeah, if pretty much. So it's just been a very interesting time in my life, specifically just kind of navigating that. But that's why I chose that number. All right, so the next category is health. All right, and the first subcategory is mental health. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how?
Yeah, today I feel like an 8. Usually I'm like a 4, but
Oh,
today I'm an 8. I
okay,
just yesterday I just had a ton of gratitude for my life yesterday, and I just was like, I get to do all the
okay.
things I want to do. I get to dance, I get to do yoga, I get to talk to cool people like you. Uh, there's a lot of things that have been removed out of my life recently, stress-wise. So, I feel pretty good on the mental health wise, but then on the physical health, I'm probably like a 4 right now.
Oh man.
And that's simply because I have some like issues that have been going on and I've been trying to go get through the healthcare system and they're not being my friend right now. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, the worst when, yeah, because everything is, it's like a game, the game of life. You have to like really, and it's not a game in the sense of like when you really need something, sometimes they just, some people don't care,
Mhm.
unfortunately, and other people who do care are not really in the proper places when you need them to be.
That's right. How
So,
about you? What are you?
I would say mental health, I would say maybe like a seven. Just because again, just the transition of just transcending into the next level of my career is really putting me in a semi identity crisis, but not all the way because it's really bringing me back to the old version of me and what parts of the old me, or I guess the younger me, the inner child in me, like what actually needed to be validated in order for me to know that like okay, I was on the right path, and just kind of getting rid of everything that was new in a sense. So it's just there's a lot of oxymoron type of scenarios happening in my life right now, and it's been quite challenging to just be at peace with the fact that life is just full of oxymorons and not everything like contradictions. And so life is just very contradictory at times. And so this is how ultimately I'm like, okay, well, I must be on the right path because a lot of things contradict in life. And so I've been reading a lot of quotes to kind of help me stay above the five mark. And so far, so good. Um, Health wise, I would say I'm at about, yeah, I say like an eight. Um, so every now and again I get kind of stiff and my start hearing things popping, locking, and all type of stuff.
Not in a dance way or a dance way.
I didn't even think of that. But like, yeah, and I'm like, what is this? But I'm like, all right, whatever it is, I have to embrace it and just take it in stride. So, this is what it is. All right, so the next category is family.
Hmm. I would
Yeah.
say I'm neutral about it. So the same way that you feel about friends is probably how I feel about my family right now. And
Okay.
it's just been interesting because like the book with it but coming out, it's interesting who has been like very supportive and being like, I'm gonna share it with everyone, and who's like, oh, good for you, like so so I
Mm,
say that, and I'm not saying that like I'm not, maybe I'm a little bitter about it, but I'm saying that to you in the sense of, what everything you're describing of like just making a transition of like, well, who it is that you want to be. Like there will be people who support you. And surprisingly, some of the people who have supported me are people who have been very much on the peripheral, like extended family who like have come out of nowhere. Like and like for example, for me, my in-laws have been way more supportive. Like that side of my family, which is not even my blood family,
right.
have been super supportive. And so you just never know. And so I'm really glad for that. But right now I feel like about a five. How about you?
Okay. Yeah, I would say just maybe a four, like just under the five mark. And you know what? You make me realize like I didn't even consider the in-laws, and this is so true because over the few years that I've been doing this, I noticed that a lot more in-laws are taking more attention and like just ready to jump in support. And they've even shared with me a lot of their professional side of life that I had no idea about because as a kid, it's like you don't know who went to college and got what degree, like in your in-laws or who are entrepreneurs on the in-laws side. But they've been really providing me with a lot of different leads and which I find to be amazing because I'm like, I didn't even think they cared that. Like, I didn't even think they knew me. Like, I mean, they know me obviously, but it's like, I feel seen with that side of the family. But also my financial family has is helping me, and it's like with through the help there is grief, and that's why I chose a four because although your book really had me reflecting in a major way, there's a lot of grief that is tied to the reflection piece. But my theme for this year is like people choose a word, so I chose the actual theme of reflect and reset, and so this is where I'm at in life, and it's just it, interesting of how I have to restructure my goals around the new ecosystem of families that I have, and what does that look like? And how am I like, it's just a whole bunch of different layers of um, the identity crisis, which is not really, it's not a crisis, but it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like, I didn't imagine that this is where my life was going to go when I was younger. And they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? But, I feel fulfilled, and it's just a very interesting transition. So,
I love
but
that.
I'm here for it. So the next category is fun.
I'm at like a 10.
Ah,
I'm having a
okay.
lot of fun this week. I feel really good about it. I went to like
Ooh,
3 dance classes. I've gone to like 2 yoga classes. My husband and I pitched a tent in our balcony and practiced
okay.
for our camping trip, and so we're just having a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, I would say I'm neutral. I'm at like a five. Um, Again, I've been inside mostly. I do have a few events going. Like I'll be going to a coffee shop on Friday to just kind of network a little bit. Which I prefer. My fun is usually outdoors, not indoors. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's a bit different, but in preparation of just reading, taking time to just relax and not go so much and just kind
Right.
of slow down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing like, okay, well, what does fun look like for me when I'm not on go mode? And it's very interesting because I'm still uh real like trying to appreciate the fact of like reflection, and it is fun to reflect on the better times and the happier moments in life, and like, oh, okay, like how does that, like, even with my children, checking in with them and finding out like what's going on in their life, and what are their financial goals, and how are they navigating it. It's just like a calm fun. It is really it's just interesting to try to identify what that is, what that looks like for me. So
Okay.
yeah. So the next category is education.
Um, that's interesting. I would say like a 3 right now.
Oh.
And not that I'm like, I don't feel bad about it. It's more so like that just hasn't been my focus the last couple of weeks. I feel like I have like consumed so much education for so many years that that's probably why my 10, like my fun is like so much on the 10 side because I used to think like, oh, like I would spend all my fun time on like self-improvement and like more books and more whatever. And so
Mhm.
the only thing and it's funny that you mentioned that is that I've been debating about whether or not I want to go to TED, like the full TED conference, which is the
Mm,
main one, which is in April. It's
mhm.
always been on my bucket list, but it's for some reason it doesn't feel right for me to go this year because it would be a very intensive educational week, and I don't know that I'm in that space right now. And I'm more
Right.
about educating other people right now than like myself, I think is probably the other
Oh,
priority. So, how about you?
yeah. Ironically, I was gonna say a nine because yeah, your book has educated me a lot on just what I
Oh,
didn't
yeah, and it's
realize.
working.
Right. Yeah, ironically, which is why I got stuck, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I kind of went down the rabbit hole of just like really stopping and being very intentional. So like you being intentional in the book has just been contagious for me. Just intentionally reflecting on where I was, where I've been, in my storyline, my even my hero's journey, as a speaker. I didn't really have it defined until I started reading between your book and Dr. J's book. I'm like, wow, okay, this is a lot to unpack here. So
Mhm.
so I've been unpacking, and it's been very fulfilling because now it helps me gain a lot more clarity as a leader, which a lot of my prospects ask me, like, okay, well, you're doing all of this stuff for everybody else, but who's doing what for you? And I can honestly say that you got, like, your book is actually doing that for me. What I did not, again, I had no expect. I didn't even know what to expect. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. We support each other. But I was like, whoa, like oh, it's this type of book. Okay, let me get the tissue box. Let me sit down. Let me light my candle and, give my aromatherapy to keep me, you know, in flow. And yeah, I've learned a lot.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
yeah, much appreciated. All right. So the next category is love life, and self-love is the first subcategory.
I would say a 6 on self-love and an 8 on romantic love.
Okay, all right.
I'm still working through a
Well,
lot of like even I have a hard time taking compliments. I have a hard time like hearing what people are saying to me. And then in a nice but weird way, it's been happening a lot lately because of the book, right? So like I'm still like
uh,
working through, oh, I don't deserve that. Oh, like, like so that's where I would probably rate myself a 6. And then romantic love wise, like AJ and I have just been having a lot of fun. And I woke up this morning and I was just like, I'm so grateful for him that I have a partner who actually is fun to be with and has a lot of the same hobbies as me. Um, and I kept AJ and I kept getting these comments on my Instagram page. They're like, everyone's like, "Oh, we just love you. You guys are so cute together." And I'm like, "Really? I mean, why?" And then I thought about all my other friends, and none of their partners like go dance with them, right? Or none of their partners like they don't have like similar hobbies. Like one of my girlfriends, like her husband's, fun is golf and her fun is like crocheting or whatever. So they love each other, but they don't spend those hobbies together. And so we're lucky that we have a lot of the similar interests.
that is amazing. Yeah, because it's very challenging. This is why I'm still single. So I'm like, yeah. It's very difficult when you are a bright, bubbly person and it's like, a ball of energy, so to speak. And if somebody is not aligned with that, it just makes it a lot more difficult. So
Mhm.
I think on my romantic side, I'm neutral. I'm at a 5, only because it's like I'm an overthinker. Someone said, "You're not an overthinker, you're a critical thinker," and I'm like, I think I'm a little bit of both.
Mhm.
But when I lean more on the overthinking scale, it's like, okay, well, I've already thought through certain things, and it's like, it's very difficult for anybody to romance me because I'm like, what was the intention behind what you're doing?
Mhm.
But on the self love side, I guess it's higher. So I would say like I'm at an 8, um, because I again, I don't mean to keep like going back to the book, but because we're talking about it, like your book really made me stop and force me really to um really write down all of the reasons why I love myself. And I'm like, that's not something I've ever done. Like this is very different for me. And again, as a leader, I'm like, I did not expect this. I did not expect to be crying during reading a book. Like, who does this? But yeah, it made me realize, like growing up, there were not a lot of moments where I received that affirmation. And I was constantly forced into this box that I knew I didn't fit in my entire life. Um, and I really felt like portion of that impacted how um, I mothered my children. And so that I think that's really what was like getting to me with the self love, because it was like, wow, I could not love my children effectively until I started learning to love myself. And it made me realize a lot of like you speak about money mistakes, but I thought of like my mommy mistakes, and like how many mommy mistakes I made in this process of getting through the financial journey and, leading up to buying my first house and leading up to saving up so much and really struggling like to not have childcare because it's like, oh, okay, like I wasn't treating myself well enough for other people to respect me, and it reflected in my struggle and in all of the adversity that I had to go through as a result of me not loving myself. So I'm like, wow, I love myself more than I thought I did. But again, it was that growth process of it. And yeah, I appreciate that chapter too, man. It really got me.
It's interesting. I've gotten that feedback a lot from folks of like all generations, like all like male, female, like where a lot of people are like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that in chapter 2." And it's like someone left a really nice review. They were like, "Oh, I thought this was going to be one of those books that I could just like sit by my nighttime reading." And then they went, "Nope, I have to change it to my morning reading because I got to take notes. I got to like have the tissues, like I got to like actually work through some of this stuff." So I'm really grateful that you said that because that was kind of the intent of why we wrote it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, your intentions definitely work. See, I'm telling you, y'all, this is the professional of goals, like for sure. Yeah, I didn't expect it, but I'm glad that, getting through it. Hopefully, we may have to have a part two at some point.
Yeah, I would
And,
love that.
when I get through the other chapters. But okay, moving to the next category, personal growth
Hmm.
on a scale of 1 to 10.
I would say I'm at like a 7. And mostly because I keep saying this, I'm like 25, 21 days, 3 weeks away from my 40th birthday. And I am having a hard time. I made this like artificial deadline. I have to do all these things before my 40th birthday. And so on the good news is like I've gotten a lot of stuff done. Like I'm taking swimming lessons, I'm taking improv classes, I'm doing these things outside of money
Okay.
that like are stretching me in different ways. Like my biggest fear has been water, so I was like I have to like get over it. And so I feel a lot of growth in that aspect, but it's
Mhm.
starting to be a little bit of like a accomplishment like I'm turning everything into I have this habit of turning a lot of things into like, oh, I have to finish it because so I can like prove to myself or prove to other people versus like sometimes you can just like slow it down. Like you don't have to. Like I was really upset when we found out like our improv they messed up the dates for the improv show that for my class that I was singing and so I can't make it before my 40th birthday and I was like real upset about it. And then I was like
Mm,
and then afterwards, I was like, so what? Like, so if I have to do it like 2 weeks after my 40th birthday, like what? Who cares,
yeah.
right? So
Mm,
I think it's very meta, but like I'm a 7 in the sense of like I'm doing all the things I said I was going to do in terms of personal growth, but then I still have growth on like not trying to grow so much. Like just chill out, you know? But that's part of my growth is learning how to chill out.
right. You see what I'm right. Yeah, it's like a little bit of contradiction in it, but it's still like you're still able to meet the mark. It's just different, like the other side of it, which is great. I mean, I
What about
love
you?
this. I love this for you. Just the fact of, well, I mean, you're always gonna have goals, but just the fact of like accepting the fact that sometimes the goals can be delayed, and it's just that's just life. This is a part of life, lifing, and it
Hmm.
doesn't mean the goal is not accomplished. So
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
different. I would say my personal growth. Um, I want to say a 9. I have never felt more liberated in these
Great.
past few weeks, and um, it literally is taking me so much by surprise. I don't know. I feel like I'm just being very redundant, but it really is like where I'm at right now. With so many different things. And uh, again, from reading the book, I go into YouTube and I start watching some other influencers. And so ironically, it brings me to stronger influencers because now it's like, okay, what used to influence me before is not like, as I'm getting the validation from the reflection, my own self reflection from the book, I'm realizing like, oh, okay, why am I following this person? Like, yeah, they're in my list, but that's not even who I am anymore. Like I really need to have a stronger sense of leadership. And so really being way more intentional with connecting with stronger influences as far as healing my inner child. Like, okay, people so basically influencers that speak to the inner child. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting because a lot of them are addressing neurodiversity and a lot of therapists they're like okay this is what's what like they're really explaining they're like parenting me in a sense
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
um and I'm sharing it with my children as well so they're kind of getting the overflow from my healing journey and So many people don't know, but my children live with their dad since
Mhm.
the pandemic because I used to work in a hospital in New York, and it was just crazy out here. But they it my sharing with them is helping them in their journey. They're 14 to 16 right now. They'll be 17, 15 to 17 in May. And so like they're growing separately but still together with me in an interesting kind of way. And yeah, I definitely, yeah, I have these books to, I owe it to all of these books. I'm like, okay, this year is going to be the year of the authors. Just making intentional, making it very intentional to connect with authors live to speak about their books and how it's actually impacting me because a lot of prospects, some of them I can't help. And I'm learning through the books why I couldn't help them was because there were parts of me that still needed to grow, be watered and nurtured so that way it can grow. So
Mm.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, which segues to the last category, which is career.
Oh, and we're just in time for it too. I
Yep.
don't. I honestly feel like I'm like a 10 right now, and I don't know if that's a good thing. As in like,
Okay.
uh, I feel like I'm at like the peak of my quote unquote career, as in like in the personal finance space. I feel good about the work that I'm putting out.
Hmm.
I AJ and I just had this conversation this morning where it's just like I could try to make more money this year, but I'm like but like to what purpose?
Mm,
Versus where I want to spend more time on this year, which is why I've been socializing the idea to folks that I might be like retiring early, as in slowing down a lot of stuff. So I'm not going to be taking as many clients this year. And again, the book has been really helpful in that. It's just like, oh, you want to pick my brain? I literally wrote it down, everything for you. So now if you want to meet me, like I have kind of like a new boundary in place where it's like if people want
right.
coaching, they're going to have to read the book first. Um, and so that's
Mm,
been helpful a lot. And so I feel like I'm at a 10 in my career in the sense of like everything I kind of set out to do in the personal finance space, I pretty much feel like I've done that. But why I say I don't know if it's a good thing is because I'm like, but what's next? Like, what do I want to do next? And it doesn't have to be, and the idea that it doesn't have to be money related is kind of interesting for me. So and
right.
I'll always have a foot in personal finance, but
Hmm.
I had this thought the other day where it's like so few people that I've ever met, even when they became financially independent, they still were stuck in the hamster wheel. Like I know a lot of rich people who still work like 60 hours a week and like who
Mm,
don't see their kids or, whatever, right? And
hmm.
so I was like, I don't want to squander this opportunity. I've hit my fire number. I have enough money at least to like last me a couple of years if I decided to like take some risks. And but then now it's like, ooh, what's the risk? Because 10 years ago, this career was my risk. So
Mm.
exciting to think about. Like do I was thinking about it as like Michael Jordan, like do you like try to retire like when you're at the top of your game or do you like try to retire like when like when you're on like the decline or whatever? And I'm like, I feel like I'm at the top of my game right now. So I feel like I could just chill out for a little bit.
Hey, listen, chilling out is amazing. I mean, I semi did that, but I realized, like, yeah, again, reading a book, and yeah, and I see exactly what you mean by like the person has to read your book because there's a lot of work. Like, this book is not your just sit in the coffee shop and get through it in an hour. And if
Mhm.
if anybody's doing that, they're really not getting anything from. Like, I don't know what they could possibly be getting from it if they're not really intentional. Like your book literally breeds intentionality. And so um I would say that's a great boundary as far as like career wise because yeah, it really provokes a lot of work for those like the intention people who really want to get to the next level and really be at the top of the game. Like I would say on my end career wise, again through these books I realized I'm like, okay, maybe I'm at like a 6 because um I've not taken the time out to just be in solitude um enough. Every now and again, I'll go on vacation or whatever, but to really be intentional about um growing me from the inside out. And what this book made me realize is that so many people in life are so superficial. It's crazy.
Mm.
And I didn't see that before. Similar to what you said earlier about like, when people are giving you feedback, you really like sometimes it takes time for you to like realize like, okay, what are they really saying? Like, what are they trying to say? Like your book made me realize the level of like I don't want to sound controversial to other people. Like it's not shade to anybody, but like just the shallowness of some people and like a lot of people that I did not realize were around me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I need to reevaluate this relationship that I have here, there, but like I have to pick the weeds, so to speak. And yeah, that there's a lot of weeds in the career aspect, but I've been taking the time out to really guard it. And again, I this is completely unintentional
Ah.
with the background, but like, just taking time out to really like be the gardener for myself. And I'm not even sure if this is also like intertwined with Dr. J's book because he talks about with couples, the being the gardener and the rose.
Yes.
And so I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, I being in solitude means I have to be the gardener of myself, like my inner self being the rose. And I guess I'm kind of implementing one into the other, in a sense of my relationship, like the relationship with self in order to crush the money goals that I'm looking. And honestly, in my careers, I'm the type of like person like help me help you. So if I can help others, like I know this is my strength, it will help me. And so if the help that I'm providing to others is not really being reciprocated in the way of like growing, then I there is really no need to continue that relationship. And so this is
That's right.
yeah.
I talk about so in H I talk about like removing energy vampires from your life, and this is what I realize is that these
Mhm.
energy vampires, they don't realize they're being vampires, right? They don't know. Like a lot of vampire, like
Right.
you think about movies and stuff, like vampires think they're alive, like they think they're whatever. So I
Mhm.
think the way that I reframe that, because I've been through that process and I'm still going through that process this year. I've already said no to a ton of speaking gigs this year where I realized that the environment that that speaking gig would have been in is just not in alignment with like where I want to be or who I want to serve or whatever. But
Mhm.
I had that aha moment this year where like even those, for lack of a better word, like you said, like superficial, like, oh, I didn't realize they were that way or whatever, is there was a time and place for those relationships when I was first starting as in like, oh, at least these people are showing me that they're willing to be out there, whether or not whatever they're saying we may not agree with, but like at least they had the balls to go out there and say what they wanted to say or be however they wanted to be. Now
Right.
that I'm very clear on who I am, right, and very clear on who I want to serve and very clear on where I want to spend my time, I've, it's kind of like the Marie Kondo thing where it's just like, thank you. Like instead of being like, we're gone, bye. Like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's like, thank you for this.
Right.
Thank you for the gift that you gave me at this point in my life. And I'm gonna like let it go, And so that's where, and just
Yeah.
where I had to let go of things. I actually just posted today that like the book just crossed over 1,222 books, which is a lot for me. But when we talked about even writing this book, my initial thought was, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
there's some of these personal finance influencers who have millions and millions of followers. And so they're all trying to get on the New York Times bestseller list. And that's like a big thing in the book industry. And I
Mhm.
had this talk with someone this past week where she had mentioned another personal finance influencer who is on the New York Times bestseller list, but she was like, but no one's actually said the book was good. As in, as in they sold a lot of
Mm.
copies because they're very good marketers.
Right.
But there wasn't anyone who said, "Oh, the book made me reflect on myself, the book, whatever," right?
Mhm.
And then my friend said to me, she's like, "But someone on the Oprah team read your book and said like, this about the book, right?" So that was such a mental shift for me where even for
Mm,
myself, I catch myself sometimes trying to be like in that superficial space where I'm just like, oh, but I'll never be a New York Times bestseller. I'll never have a million followers or whatever. But then for someone like you who is very substantive and very reflectful to say, oh, the book is like helping me process some things, like that's really the intent of the book that I had to begin with. But it's hard to not get sucked in to those things sometimes. And so I'm really proud of
mhm.
you that you are being very intentional about that, like relatively early in your journey as like a personal finance educator and as someone who is building community. I wish like I had figured that out like 8 years ago. Like so you're ahead of me in that regard. Like
Oh,
I'm 10 years into this game and I'm still trying to unwrap that, right? So you're actually ahead of most people in realizing that.
right. And it's so and it's challenging. Like, to be honest, it's not like even for me, I put a digital book out, The First Seven Steps to the 800 Club, and I quickly redacted it because of that. Like, like the superficial side of just being an influencer and being in this space and just seeing so many other people that are, like you said, on the bestsellers list. They're in all of these publications,
Or
of
have all these
Forbes and
brand
this, that,
deals, or
whatever.
like I've never had a brand. I've never my money has never been made in brands, which was a lot of people in the space. So yeah, I'm glad that.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's so easy to get sucked in, but it's like literally, and I don't even know, I guess the further I get into your book, it'll reveal to me like how I've even made it so far. Because yeah, like I'm 3 years and actually about 3.5 years in now. And majority of what I've been doing is self-funded. Like there's
mhm.
very little so basically I'm like really fresh in the game. But just by going to conferences and really just being real with people, because I really didn't know how to be superficial, to be honest with you. And it could be like that. Well, I can't even say the New York thing because you were raised in New York also.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess for whatever reason, I don't know. I guess intuitively, I just never really focused on recognition because, and it could have been just growing up. It was always the opposite. Like I was always just the super smart one. Like I was of 20 of what was it, 27 children, grandchildren, because my grandmother pretty much raised us all, majority of us. I was like number 21. And so again, I didn't put this stuff in that book. So I'm like, oh, this is inspiring me to really come out with more of my story. It's triggering at times, but it's like, oh, okay, this actually is something that I should have put in the digital book that I had put out originally, just to kind of tie it together to who I really am. Uh, and yeah, it's just, again, I redacted it because of the fact that I know, oh, this is definitely not going to be a New York Times bestseller. This is going nowhere. Like this is just going on my website and barely, if anybody sees it, they see it. Majority of people probably will not because I'm just not that at that level of articulation like everybody else. But then I learned scripts. So I'm like, okay, there's a lot of scripting that goes on. There's a lot of like I do a lot, but I don't have a videographer. I don't have photographers. So it's like everything that I've done over these 3.5 years, there's nothing to show for it because nobody has been photographing it, and it does feel like a very lonely journey when you don't get the recognition and you don't really realize like, oh, that's what the world requires, recognition. Otherwise, you're not going to be seen. But this, just going to the conferences and being able to connect just authentically, I guess it fulfilled my purpose more so than the book. I mean, obviously, I do have a couple of publications because you are again, it's an inspiration um, of me coming out with the faith, family, finance part of what I'm doing because again, this book is giving me the articulation that I need to realize like, okay, this is what it's about. And here are my different stories to kind of piece it all together. And even with testimonials, I was getting very upset because I was, having people, I had a client, one or two paid clients, but never got testimonials. And I'm like, what the heck is this all about? Like, I'm doing all this work for what? But your book is making me realize, like, okay, there's an art to this, and it starts with self, and it starts with just really. I mean, your C is really more so toward finance, but finance is personal, and so if you're not really into it, for me, if I'm not into with the personal side, um, it's going to have an impact on the business, the bottom line of the business, really. And yeah, this is, I guess that's my way of concluding the personal growth side of my
Yeah.
response. Yeah,
I feel
how
like it's
that's
a good way
been.
to end the session today though too. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So really quick, if just a quick wrap up, if you can give one word of advice to, I'm going to say the Gen Z grads, because this is the demographic that is really resonating with what I'm doing. What would you say to them
mhm.
as far as, crushing their money goals in this
I would
economy?
I would say right now what's coming to me is, looking to support yourself, but also support your parents in their journey. For a lot of us, our parents did the best that they could with what they had, and that might not have put you in the position that you want to be today. And that's okay. And that's okay, right? So the best thing that I can say right now is I spent most of my early 20s like kind of like being like, oh, my parents didn't give me this, or my parents didn't give me that, or like I went to a school where there was like a lot of trust fund babies, and I'm like, I'm not a trust fund baby, like this stuff, like a lot of excuses. And so rather than
Hmm.
being like, you know what, like I did get it. I did get an education. I did learn these things. Like, let me go apply them. And so looking to your parents for support, but also figuring out ways to support yourself in areas that your parents might not be strong at. I get a lot of adults who say, "Oh, nobody taught me," but like, luckily for y'all, Gen Zers, there's like so many resources that weren't available when I was in college. So absolutely use those.
Right.
And then like just a more practical tip is if you have
Hmm.
one goal this year in 2025, I would say to build your cash flow cushion, and it's 1 month's worth of expenses sitting inside your checking account so that early on in your career, you can start getting off of the paycheck to paycheck mentality.
Right. This is amazing, ladies and gentlemen, dads and grads. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Um, any way, in any which way that you can support or actually feel encouraged from what Bernadette Joy has just said, I encourage you to be sure to let us know. Give your feedback. Show your support. Because to be honest with you, no one is perfect, and I know that in this world, day and age, there's a lot. I'm sorry. There's a lot that has to, take place. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world and a lot of confusion. And we want you to know that being clear on your goals and your intentions are what's most important. And so, with that, thank you so much, Bernadette. Once again, if you can just let them know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and where they can leave their feedback.
Yes. So I really appreciate this conversation. It was such a joy for me today. You can find me at crushyourmoneygoals.com. It's the same as the book title. You can find more information about my book, my programs, and other free resources. And if you go to crushyourmoneygoals.com/free guide, you can get my 30 resources that will help you start your money plan today, if you're not ready to read the book.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. So, thank you so much. We hope that you have an amazing rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you all next time.